Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Better, a show about two longtime friends trying their best, growing up, and hopefully getting better. I'm Zach Johnson.
And I'm Sam Cherry. I want to welcome back a lot of our listeners because I have a strong impression based on the reaction to our first two Taylor Swift episodes that these are the only ones people listen to.
Yes.
I mean, I know from the numbers that people listen to our other episodes, but I think there's a strong contingent of people that only listen to Taylor Swift Part 1 and Part 2 and are now here for Taylor Swift Evermore.
Part 3,
welcome
yeah.
back. We'll see you in 2 weeks when she puts out another album.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're back much sooner than we thought we would be.
I thought it'd be 2 years.
Which I think everyone kind of thought that we are back a lot sooner than we thought we'd be. But this is
back.
This is a continuation of our Taylor Swift series, the hard-hitting Taylor Swift news, and so not a lot of it. There has not been a lot that has changed in the last little bit. So,
but what's interesting is it's a different format only because we're not going through 4 albums. So we can put a lot more.
We should have done this years ago.
Well, years ago we were still throwing episodes away every week. But,
yeah, exactly.
So if you don't know, which I don't know how you clicked on this episode, but if you don't know, Taylor Swift just dropped a new album. It's called Evermore. This is her 9th studio album, 5 months after her 8th studio album, Folklore. We'll probably talk a little bit about Folklore throughout this because it is, and we'll get into it, the sister album. But yeah, we went through if you haven't heard those two, go back, listen to Taylor Swift Part 1 and Part 2. We go through her whole discography in 2 episodes. This is going to be a bit more of a deep dive because it's just one album. But we were able to do, go a little bit more in on this one because it's just one album. So it's going to be a lot easier. But there was one follow-up piece of news that in my notes ended up being 8 pages and will not be 8 pages worth of talking. But I forgot, and this relates to the music because we've talked about before. I have no interest in her personal life. I don't know her personally. No. And the drama stuff is, I just don't like it.
Yeah.
It's not to my taste.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about it, so it works out really well for us.
Well, so I realized afterwards that I'd completely forgotten when we talked about Taylor Swift to mention Scooter Braun, because I wasn't fully sure who he was, but I got educated on it, and I have 8 pages worth of quotes. But by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, this is not much of a story outside of the drama of it.
Mm-hmm.
So to keep it short, as you all know, Taylor Swift was signed by Big Machine Records, which is owned partly by Scott Borchetta, who owns the record label. Worked with her since she was 15 until 2017. I got it written down somewhere. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think 2017. Anyway, so she has a contract with them for her first 6 albums, and that contract ends, and so she wants to renegotiate her contract, and through negotiations ends up deciding to go leave Big Machine and go to Universal. Everything seems like they leave on a good note. They're all really happy about it. Again, this is where you get into some he said, she said stuff. And I don't know, Scott Borchetta shows some of the contract that seems to show what he's saying, but then also he's got these texts that support what he's saying, but he just has the text of the text. He doesn't show a screenshot, and it's kind of like, why wouldn't you just show a screen? And again, I got immediately bored of this. But anyway, she goes to Universal, and then he sells the masters. So the sort of the rights and usage of her first 6 albums as a part of a deal of selling Big Machine Records to this guy, Scooter Braun, who is a guy. He's a manager, I guess, of sorts for Justin Bieber, a bunch of famous people, and Kanye West. And there's been drama back and forth between Taylor and Scooter Braun. She doesn't really like him. We all know that she really doesn't like Kanye West. So there's just been beef that I'm not interested in getting into. Blah, 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 blah. She's very mad. But again, to save you the drama, to cut to the quick of it, she's very mad that Scooter Braun owns her music. But she legally is allowed to re-record all of that music and put it out. So she can re-record. So that's what she planned to do.
Yes.
Is she's going to re-record her first 6 albums. It seems from what I've heard, with new arrangements, so they're kind of like updated versions of those first 6 albums. So that's up through Reputation, I believe. Yeah, because if this is 9, then Lover, Folklore, yeah. So up through Reputation will be re-recorded. And in her Universal contract, she owns automatically the masters of anything she puts out. So the last 3 albums, she already owns the masters too. Scooter Braun then sold her masters to Shamrock Capital Investments, one of those words, Shamrock, who offered to sell them to Taylor. She said no because Scooter Braun would receive some of that money. And she was like, that's a non-starter for me. Allegedly, Scooter Braun also offered to sell the masters back to her, but only if she would sign an extensive NDA. We don't have any. That's just Taylor's word. We don't have any like proof that happened. But you know what? Again, boring. I don't know. According to her, she had to sign an extensive NDA if she was going to buy her masters back, and she said, no, I'm not doing that. So she's going forward to just re-record them. When those come out, depending on how different they are, we might do an episode. I mean, if they're if they're new, I mean, if it's like super different, we'll do, you know, again, if they're crazy different, we might do 6 episodes. If they're kind of different, we might do an episode. If they're not different at all, we might just mention it in a different episode where we talk about some other shit. So,
Street Sharks.
Yeah, we'll talk about Street Sharks or whatever, and we'll be like, oh, also those albums came out. They sound the same. They're still good, but it's not worth talking about.
Yeah,
so.
I'm really interested in that as it comes out because you know Taylor is completely, you know, her voice has changed. She it's going to be
taste has changed.
It's going to be funny or just like really interesting and like to see if her, you know, years in the business like directly impacts how she sings Fearless or you know all of these like Speak Now songs, and I think it's going to be really interesting. And also, I'm definitely, I think Taylor has shown herself as like one that is really for the artist empowerment movement and like owning all of your own things. And I think that like this, a cynic of my, like a cynical version of myself would say that this is, you know, for her to get more money based on more album sales. But I think that this is just more of, like it is her reclaiming something that is rightfully hers. And
she wants to own that music, but she wants to own it on her own terms because there definitely have been opportunities for her to buy them. That's not in question. But they've all been in these terms. And again, it's kind of hard to nail down. There is a little back and forth on this, but there always seems to be caveats that she's not comfortable with. And so she refuses. And I mean, like a song like, for example, like a song like Dear Stephen?
No,
it's Dear John. You know, like how 10 years later is that song going to be different? Like such an emotional song about like, I was too young for this and you took advantage of someone who was too young to understand it. Now that she's 31, like how is she going to sing or arrange or deal with or even approach that song now? I'm interested. Again, if it's just re-recordings and they're basically the same, then whatever. But I hope they're different.
I think that she is the kind of artist that would make them different while also still trying to maintain the spirit and the like kind of the feeling of the originals. Yeah.
So that's the first 8 pages of notes.
Excellent.
Again, I got through all of it. I have a lot of quotes, and I was just like, none of this is really pertains to what we do on this show. So her 9th studio album, Folklore, came out on December 11th, 2 days before her birthday. And now we finally get to get into some Taylor Swift numerology. Are you excited for some numerology, Zach?
I'm gonna stop you there because you did say Folklore and it is Evermore. I am not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the audience. I want the audience to know that I heard that and I am correcting him within the moment so you do not have to correct him after the fact
Thank
I
you.
am your voice in this moment. I'm talking directly to Sam. I heard it. He now heard it. It's Evermore.
The thing is, there was some folklore follow up, and that's what at the top of this page is folklore, anything we missed. And so I just read it like a dummy. Yes, the album is called Evermore. It is the sister album to Folklore.
Yes, I am definitely ready to get back into some spirit science type numerology. I think that is going to do well for my psyche.
Usually this falls out of the purview of what I'm interested in, but it comes back in some of the music and the text of the music. And so let me just drop a couple little numerologies about Taylor Swift. So as we've mentioned before, her lucky number and birthday is 13. She's born on December 13th. Her lucky number is the 13th. And she said publicly quite a few times that she was really excited to drop this right before her 31st birthday because 31 is 13 backwards. So it's kind of also like her lucky birthday, you know? More interesting, I think. The album Folklore has 15 songs. The album Evermore has 16 songs. So together, the two of them have 31 songs. Interesting. We'll get more into this when we get into the tracks, but the 13th song is called Marjorie, and it is about her grandmother. The 13th song on Folklore, Epiphany, is about her grandfather. And this is something I learned in the interim between our two episodes, or between part 2 and part 3. So with the exception, I think, of Reputation, every album, track 5 is famous, apparently, for being the most, like, heart-wrenching of all the songs. I don't know why she does this, but for some reason she picks track 5 of every album, which in this case is Tolerate It. I would agree. A very heart-wrenching song.
That's pretty correct, yeah.
And you can find a list of this pretty easy about the track 5 thing, because she mentions, and shit, I might have said this in an earlier episode, but she mentions it in the documentary about track 5, because Jack Antonoff is like, oh, so this is track 5, and Sophie and I looked at each other like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what is that? So we looked it up, and it was like, oh, this, yeah. So that's a thing with all of her albums, with the exception of Reputation, where
it's delicate.
It's delicate. Yeah, it's not, but there's not a particularly like, or maybe it's Lover. I don't know. Anyway, there's one of them. You can find the article that I also read. You'll find it. It's probably the top hit, and that one says what the exception was.
I'm looking through albums right now, and yeah, there's some pretty sad ones hanging out on here.
Yeah, it's like a conscious choice.
Some pretty sad bangers.
It's not a.
Oh, what a weird coincidence! Great for noticing that, Sam.
No.
That is like that is like so like that. It's weird that she's not consciously doing that. Like
you get that I'm saying the opposite thing.
Well, good detective work finding that out, Sam.
Are you gaslighting me?
No, I don't think so. Anyway,
so okay, that's my numerology. I feel like I've talked a lot. I'd like to hear what you think about the album, but I didn't know a good place to fit in the numerology. So,
well, I think so. I've been listening to this album a lot over the last several days, and buddy, there's some hits on this thing. There's some absolute bangers. I think that like the intro track Willow is a great first example of like, I think it's just a fun like driving song, and then she moves into a lot of really mature songs. I think that Champagne Problems is also another one of her tracks that is it's dealing with like, at least she kind of has a theme of dealing with unrequited love, and this one is about like a failed marriage proposal, and I think that one is just really heart-wrenching. And Tolerated is also very sad. Like happiness as well as closure. Like a lot of these songs really do, she is revisiting themes from her previous records, but just dealing with them in, the way a 30-year-old would deal with them, like in a very open and mature way. And a lot of things, like I think that this album, because I'm thinking there's definitely songs that sound like No Body, No Crime featuring Haim, or Haim, which is one of my favorite groups. If you haven't listened to Haim, please do yourself a favor. They have 3 albums and all of them are fantastic. And I got to tell you, I did not like No Body No Crime when I first heard it because I was like, this sounds like Carrie Underwood's Before He Cheats.
Yep.
And
I'm sorry. And the problem was
right now.
Yeah.
But
it also sounds like Goodbye Earl. A banger of a track.
Yeah. But I have officially come around on it. I very much enjoy that song now.
All three of those songs are good.
Yeah. But there's also a lot of things that she does a really good job in experimenting with a lot of sound sonically on this that I think that she didn't really get to in Folklore. I think a lot about Long Story Short. Long Story Short
that has, might be my favorite one.
I think it's going to be the crowd pleaser of the entire album. It has a very Postal Service type feel to it, like with the electronic machine and the driving beats. I think it reminds me a lot of, Give Up, that famous Postal Service album. And Gold Rush, I think she's doing with a lot of really fun experimental things in that. I think that as she moves from the chorus to this kind of ethereal chorus sounding chorus, like with like kind of like a chamber pop vibe, I think that she really mixes those well together. And on Evermore with Bon Iver, like the way that they mix those sounds so well together, and even in the bridge, they have this thing where they are singing and matching each other, and it very much sounds musically as if they are catching the other one's lyrics as they are singing it through. There's just a lot of really, like a lot of risks that come out in just very, very well thought out ways. I think that, there's just a lot of music. There's two songs that are in 5/4. I forgot which songs they were, but I remember when I was listening, I was like, "Oh, this is like kind of strange."
I didn't write that note down because I saw it and I was like, there was one about like, oh, it's got a different time signature, and I was like, I don't care about that. And I moved on.
But like the way that she's moving it as well is still maintaining that sort of vibe, and I even like the way that she still moves into songs like Ivy and Cowboy Like Me, which are two definite, like they are two songs that really keep with the folklore vibe, the Into the Woods sort of thing. I think she does great on those. The only real I'm looking at this list here, and the only clunker that I can really think of it is "'Tis the Damn Season."
I would say of the songs, usually I find one where I'm like, this song sucks, but like I liked all of them, but comparatively, there's got to be a worst song. And okay.
And I just kind of thought that one, there was just, I felt that in that song, there were a lot of musical choices and they kind of compounded upon each other and didn't really add a lot to it. But the lyrically, I enjoyed it. I liked talking about the road less traveled by and kind of talking about like, going back to his pickup truck and his hometown and kind of revisiting the themes from her earlier records. I thought that was a really good rehashing of a lot of her first three albums. But there were some moments in that song musically where I was like, what is happening? And also I am not that big of a fan of The National. So Coney Island struck me as a national song that Taylor Swift just happened to be singing on.
She actually, funny enough that you say that. So she did an interview with Jimmy Kimmel on Monday, and she told this story about how she really wanted to work with The National, and so she literally wrote the lyrics as if it were a national song. She was writing the national song as a way to be like, oh, hey, would this be a thing? And she worked with, I always forget this guy's name, Dresser. AD. He's AD in my notes. Adam Dresser from The National, the guy who worked with her on Folklore.
Yeah.
So she knew those guys, but she literally wrote it like the National song, so that the lead singer would sing on it. And he did.
Yeah. But
if you don't like that, I get why you wouldn't like that.
Yeah. I think there is I am unfamiliar with The National, but I know enough about them to kind of like, when I hear it, I go, this sounds like a National song, and like the boom, boom, pa, boom, boom, like that sort of like drum beat. I was like, this is a National song. And I enjoyed it, but Yeah, looking at this, I'm curious. Like when Taylor says that this is a sister piece to Folklore, like how does that resonate with you? Like,
Oh, I've got a lot to say about that.
ooh,
And by say, I mean quote. Actually, I'm probably not going to, guys, here's the thing, team. I have a lot of quotes here, but I'm not super good at reading, like out loud. This is a vulnerable moment for me where I just tell you I'm like kind of illiterate. And so when I read quotes out loud, I like can't get through the whole sentence. And so I'm going to paraphrase.
Okay.
But, so in the first song, Willow, have you seen the video for Willow?
I have not. I meant to watch it, but I didn't.
So, have you seen the video for Cardigan?
Yes.
Okay. So you know how in Cardigan she is in that cabin, she goes inside the piano
Mhm.
and then comes out and she's all drenched from being in the ocean. So Willow opens in that same cabin right at the end of Cardigan. So she's still like soaking wet and she's in the cabin and she goes back into the piano and ends up in this in basically the same place as Cardigan, but then it moves to this I guess like winter wonderland. I don't know a better way to describe it. It's like a wintry forest.
Mm.
And there's all these what I just took as witches, but they're like there's whatever. I'm not going to describe the whole video. That's not the point. It has been described as sort of the fall and winter coupling with Folklore, which is a much more spring and summer album. So in Cardigan, she's in this like lush. Yes, there's all the ocean stuff, but she's in this lush green place. But then when she comes back for Willow, it's winter and fall, and it's a much. So I think Variety observed that warmth and iciness is a recurring lyrical motif in the album. And for the people who thought, I want him to read the quotes, that's what it would sound like. Not great.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, that's like part of the theme and something interesting. So, well, I'll talk about the writing. I guess this is similar to what you were saying. So Taylor talks a lot in the album or about the album and how both of these albums are really a foray into fiction. I don't think I realized how autobiographical her albums were. Like I picked up on little stuff here and there, but I didn't realize like, at least in her own perception of things, all of her songs she's ever written are about her, mostly.
Yeah, I think, I would agree with that. I think that's part of the Taylor Swift ideology. Like, I think that, when her albums would be coming out, like when Red came out, I feel like there was a dissection of how every single moment was something from a Taylor Swift song or like something from her life.
Right. And that's, and I guess probably because all of that is intensely boring to me, I just never listened to any of that. And so I just didn't,
Yeah, that is definitely
realize.
part of her early appeal.
Well, so she, in her Jimmy Kimmel, in one of the interviews somewhere, his name was Aaron Dessner, not Adam Dresner. So in an interview with Apple Music, she talked about how a lot of that autobiographical stuff she felt was loading a cannon full of clickbait and giving ammunition to the tabloids.
I would
agree.
That is a very correct assessment.
So she really walked into Folklore with this idea of creating a new lane for herself, of like trying this out. And after Folklore came out and was really, well received, she says this quote over and over again where she's like, I knew I was going to make another one because I just kept writing songs. And so the three of them, Aaron, Jack, and Taylor, although I think mostly Taylor, just usually it's mostly her, kept writing songs after they finished Folklore. And something really interesting, I'll get to this later, but there is a rumored third album that I'll go ahead and tell you I don't think is happening. But maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I saw some of the images, and it did feel like a type of internet conspiracy theory where they, once I see something with a red circle around it, I'm like, all right, that's enough of that
shit. This is not. But after she put out Folklore, she said pretty vocally, like, yeah, I knew I was going to put out a second one because I just kept writing songs, and she felt really liberated by being able to write fiction because it wasn't tabloids. It was just songwriting, which seems so weird to me because, again, I assumed a lot of it was fiction, and also I don't know. I feel like a lot of singer-songwriters, but I don't know. Like, again, like the Avett Brothers, like, are they writing about their life? I have no idea.
Possibly. So, I think that, you find a lot of, when you're writing through emotions, you write them from, how you interpreted them. Sure. And I think that it's interesting because I'm assuming since Taylor's been writing since such an early age that the lines between those things kind of got blurred, where you find success writing about your own life and people resonate with it, and you realize you have a talent for describing certain emotions that people feel, and then you kind of keep doing that. And then, once you get into the Reputation era, you're kind of leaning into that, where people know that your songs are about certain things. And and I think that now that she is, growing up, she has moved past that a bit. And it's interesting because so much of her songs have this kind of hyper real fairy tale sort of vibe to them. Yeah. And the fact that she hasn't been doing that her entire career is kind of shocking. But it must be, from her point of view, very freeing to be writing these fantastical situations, but with someone else in the driver's seat rather than her.
Well, and she mentions that as like she even described it as a way out because, and this is my impression from the interview, that she felt like, maybe there was an end to that road of like, I can't just keep writing. And Sophie and I have talked about this as well as a very sensible turn, because a lot of her music and a lot of everyone's music, I mean, this isn't certainly just her, a lot of everyone's music is talking about kind of the ups and downs of relationships. And she's been in a stable relationship for like 3 years. So it's kind of like, I want to talk about fiction because those strong emotions are still interesting to write about and sing about. Yeah. But there is no one's going to listen to an album, and no one's going to write an album of like, I'm happy.
Well, like, and also there's certain things that she, you want to write about, like you want to, like, sure, like with Champagne Problems, for example, like you want to write about something like, a marriage proposal gone wrong, but like, God forbid you ever experience that. So it's,
and she isn't experiencing that.
Yeah. So you want to write from the point of view of like someone else, which is interesting because I even think about the Last Great American Dynasty, which is a song that she is writing from the point of view of, or like writing from the point of view of someone else.
It's about someone else.
Yeah, it's about someone else. And even like now that I'm thinking about it, like back to the song Starlight, like, which is about.
Remind me that one.
It's Oh My, What a Marvelous Tune. It was the best ding, whatever, some Don't Forget How We Move. It's off of.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that song is about the Kennedys. And I think just like kind of like, yeah. She dated that Kennedy boy. But that doesn't matter.
I believe
she, like she's writing from the point of view of them, and that must like to kind of revisit that freeing experience. I think it's interesting now that I'm thinking about the songs here and how they are winter and fall. That was not really the vibe that I had going in because I was thinking through how each of these is a companion piece, and
two songs in folklore,
not necessarily songs in folklore, but the general vibe of folklore. And I kind of got wrapped into the album artwork because Taylor plans everything so ferociously, and the album artwork struck me as odd because it is just a picture of the back of her head going out of the woods, and I was like, that's interesting, especially paired with this like very gothic, almost heavy metal looking album cover where she is like surrounded by these like ever encompassing woods. Right. And and I kind of, now that I'm thinking, the way that I perceived those things was I thought that this album was one that was more about saying goodbye and closure. With the song Closure, but as well as there's a lot of moments of like, I'm going to go back to Champagne Problems with like saying goodbye, like something didn't work out, you have to say goodbye, or
Yeah, one of the critics described it as a tour of unhappy broken marriages.
Yeah,
and a lot of them are about broken marriages.
Something about like happiness, saying goodbye, tolerate it, no body, no crime.
Right.
Like Gold Rush, like Coney Island, like all of these songs that it was not necessarily sad, but it was just
it was sad stuff. Sorry.
It's about like, I think that, like with a song like Happiness, I don't think that's necessarily a sad song. It is a song that says something along the lines of like, yes, this thing that we have has come to a conclusion. However, there was happiness because of me, and there will be happiness after me. There was happiness because of you. There will be happiness after you. Like saying, like treating every goodbye as something that is sad is very crippling. And I think that this album was less about treating the end as something sad, but rather treating closure as something that was good and treated with the same sort of fantasy elements that was in Folklore. So, and I even like zoomed in on the Folklore album, because in the Folklore album, the one where she's in the middle of all those trees, you see she is facing the camera. And I was like, oh, this is her entering the woods. This is her entering these things. And that album has a lot of, not necessarily like happier subjects, but ones that there is something about like newness. And there is a lot more of like experiencing something for the first time. And Evermore was about like, even the last song Evermore, which is like, I thought I'd be sad Evermore. Like it's like you are closing the book on something. And so I really thought that like my interpretation of them was less about spring and summer and fall and winter, but more of two bookends, one at the front of the book and one at the back. And the stories in the middle happen, but like you will come to a conclusion of each of them, and you will have a beginning of each of them. So I kind of, as I was looking through it, I was kind of like, oh, this is an album about various people having to either realize the situation they're in is not ideal or saying goodbye.
Yeah, but to your point, to your point, if Folklore is all an album about starting things new, and Evermore is an album about ending things, not in a bitter and angry way, but just in sort of the natural way, like closure. Like that song specifically is not okay, but like Champagne Problems or Happiness, like finding this natural end to things. Are those not, in literature at least, like metaphorical representations of spring and winter?
Yeah,
like winter is a natural progression of life where everything dies, but it's just a natural part of how things go. I mean, I feel like you're saying the same thing with of course that was a winter album. It's about things dying.
Yeah, and I think that is like not necessarily like a more simplistic version of what I said, but like like a much more concise version of what I said, because now that I'm looking through like the albums, it is very like the songs aren't about Halloween or you know like Christmas.
Metaphorically about
but it is like in that sort of fantasy way, like things coming to a conclusion. So I think that is definitely a more concise way of saying that. But it is interesting because I do not like sad music in any way, shape, or form.
You're a pop fiend.
I'm a pop boy. I'm a Carly Rae Jepsen stan. And it's interesting that I liked this album, I think, a lot more. Not a lot more, but I think I would give this album the edge over Folklore just because I felt just more enveloped. There was a lot more songs where I was just like, yo, this is like a very like intense experience, and or like a more covering experience. And I'm glad that Taylor kept writing, because writing these sort of lyrics, especially in the tone that she was writing like Folklore in, I think that is definitely her wheelhouse. And definitely,
she's a great storyteller. That's why I was so surprised that it was all autobiographical before that, because she is such a good storyteller that I just assumed that a lot of it was fiction.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think that, she was this, because at first when I saw this, I was like, what? Like, it is like an artist thing to say. It's like, these kids stop writing. It's just like, then call these the B-sides. Like,
but they really aren't. It's crazy.
No, I don't have a bad word to say about Folklore. I'm telling you what I said prior to listening to Evermore.
I know.
like prior to listening to it, I was just like, these are just if these are just folklore B-sides, and it's released a folklore B-sides
Right.
album. But yeah,
thematically, it's so different. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the thing,
yeah,
is
yeah.
what
And
we're
it-
talking about is it is a separate. It's a sister album. It's a second.
Yes.
It's a second half.
Yeah. And I think that like listening to it so many times, I was able to one appreciate like her longing to write more songs, as well as just like her lyricism and like her like like these are two different pieces, like recorded in the same time, but yes, thematically they are very different from one another. And I think that in another world, you could take songs from each of them and put them into one album, but I don't think that would have created the same experience
Right.
of having a fully summer spring experience and a full winter fall experience, just through the like placing different songs at different times in each album.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I mean, it feels, especially when some of it's confirmation bias, but knowing that they're set up that way
Mhm.
enhances the experience. And I don't have a bad word to say about Folklore, but I enjoyed Evermore more, probably because I do like sad music, and so like I was more into it. But I really think like song for song, they were better songs. And again, it's hard to it's what am I comparing, because it's a 5-month difference.
Yeah.
But I thought Folklore was a much more mature, developed album. But the thing is, I loved Lover. You know what I mean? Like the last 3 albums have been my favorite 3 albums that she's ever put out. Like I really have enjoyed it. But yeah, it just felt much deeper, and knowing that those 2 albums have that connection of being this pair, really did deepen that experience. So really quickly, I want to get into the.
I just want to say it reminds me of when Nelly put out that album Sweat, and then he put out the album Suit, and then he sold it as a double album, Sweatsuit. And
there was a big rumor that when Damn came out by Kendrick Lamar, because it came out on Good Friday, that there was going to be another album that came out on Easter called Nation.
That would have been
Damnation. That would have blew my mind.
That would have blown my mind. That would have blown my mind, and also it would have been such a quick turnaround. Like,
presumably he made them both at the same time.
No, but I'm saying like in terms of like listening, like for some poor blog that's just like just trying to listen to Damn is like
on a holiday weekend.
Like, oh shit! Like it has to listen to this other whole album, and the report is due on Monday, baby.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no. So I went home. This was in the before times, and I went to my in-laws' house for Easter, and my sister-in-law was she's a big Kendrick Lamar fan, and she was just like, yeah, and there's a new album, it's gonna be called Nation, and it's coming out tomorrow. And I was just like, hey, big if true. I don't know, but big if true. Anyway,
that actually is a great way to respond to any accusations of fraud, but that's for a different podcast.
Big if true. Yeah, it's for a different episode, but I over the last couple of months, I've become Twitter poisoned, and now that's how I think of things in terms of Twitter. But again, this episode is for people who don't normally listen to our show, so we'll keep our antics to a minimum.
Yes.
So there is a rumor that, unfortunately, big if true, I don't think is true, but that there is a third album called Woodvale coming out. So Taylor talked about this in her interview with Jimmy Kimmel on Monday. It's a very charming interview. You guys should watch it. But basically, in the Folklore art on one of the not the main picture, but it's a picture of I guess one tree.
Folklorniverse.
So yeah, I'm glad you got that out of your system. In the Folklore, I'm not gonna say it. In one of the pictures, I think it's an open field with one big tree, and she's off in the distance like all of them. But it's anyway, up in the tree, you can see this like 20% transparency. I mean, it's there. The word, now I've just forgotten it. Woodvale. The word Woodvale is in the tree. Like it's a text, element that is really low opacity.
Oh yeah, I see. Oh yeah, it's definitely there.
Oh yeah. And So I believe I didn't hear this when Folklore came out, but it seems maybe even then people were expecting a second album. And then when Evermore came out, people are now expecting a third album called Woodvale.
Gosh.
Don't get your hopes up. As your friend, I'm keeping your expectations low because I was very excited when I saw them.
You introduced something to me only to tell me to par my expectations.
40 minutes ago, I told you there wasn't going to be a third album. So, according to Taylor, and again, this could be a lie, and that's fine, and she's trying to, I don't know.
Yeah, I did just see one thing. I'm looking at pictures of the Evermore, or the Woodvale thing, and I am seeing people, because she's saying it's not true, and people are pointing to 2 Instagram posts that she had recently, where she says not a lot going on, and those were released, like, both just, like, days before the albums were.
I mean, the thing is, like, I don't know. I'd love a third album. I have a couple reasons why I think there won't be one, but I'm happy to be wrong.
She said she didn't do it.
Yes. Well, and she explains the Woodvale thing. So in the Jimmy Kimmel interview, what she says is that, and this doesn't make a ton of sense. So I'm going to start with that. This doesn't make a ton of sense. But she was really worried about people finding out anything about the album. So she gave every album a code name. And it was
a Blue Harvest to Return of the Jedi.
It is like Blue Harvest, except she's a singer. If they would just think a different. So anyway, so the code name she wanted a code name that was like maybe similar letters, but the same number of letters as the album title. So for Folklore, it was Woodvale, and for Evermore, it was December. Those were the code names. I don't think that makes a ton of sense, because if I found out Taylor Swift was working on a project called Woodvale, I would assume, she's got an album coming out.
You wouldn't be like, this might be Yogi Bear too.
Yeah, is she doing a movie? Is she gonna start a TikTok? Like, no, I would assume she has a new album called Woodvale. So it doesn't totally track with me why you would give it a code name, except for if someone found out about it, they would get the wrong album title. But for 2 surprise albums, the surprise is that they're albums. It's not the name of the album. So full disclosure, I don't think that makes any sense. But that's her story, is that Woodvale. So they made all these mock-ups. They did the photo shoots. They did the album. They did the photo shoots. And they did mock-ups before they landed on the title.
Oh, no.
Folklore. Or maybe it was like, we still want to keep the code name on there just so in case these get leaked. But so she put Woodvale on the album art, and they deleted most of it. Like, they deleted most of those and got rid of them because she decided, I don't want the title on the album art. But because that one's in the trees, missed it. And so it got printed. And so the reason Woodvale is on there is because that was the mock-up art, and they forgot to delete the text layer. That's her story.
This is I don't know. That is
I'm just reporting the facts. That's what she said.
If it does happen, I'd be very surprised, but this is definitely a lot of red circles, but then again, I will eat my words. I will gladly eat my words.
I'm happy for a third one. I don't care.
Yeah.
But okay, so thematically, I have a little bit. This is all opinion at this point. That's what she said in the interview. This is my opinion for why there's not going to be a third album. And you've actually even added to this in while we're talking. So one, she talks so much about how this is so different to be doing fiction. And she even talks about how, like, a lot of the characters in the songs, like, she imagines they all live in the same town together and go to the same school together. Like, this is a fictional universe of characters. And like in Folklore, there's actually 2 songs that are connected.
3 songs that are connected.
In this one?
No, in Folklore.
No, I'm saying in Evermore, there are 2 songs that are...
You did it again, Sam. You did it again.
No, I said like in Folklore.
Oh, sorry.
It doesn't matter.
I did it again. I did it for the first time.
You did it again.
Sorry, audience.
No one cares. So anyway, so there are characters who are connected, and she says, oh yeah, and these characters, I think of them as having gone to the same school as the characters from Folklore and da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
So then it made more sense to me thinking about these album titles. Oh, she's writing folklore. She's writing mythology, right? And then when you get to the title Evermore, it's kind of like it's a phrase kind of like happily ever after. Like it's the end.
Yeah.
And then putting on top of that, spring, summer, fall, winter. Oh, okay, so this makes sense as a pair. There's not going to be 4 of them. There's going to be 2 of them, spring, summer, fall, winter. And as you pointed out, which I hadn't thought about, the first album is black and white in the woods, and the second album is in color leaving the woods.
Yeah.
So while I would be happy, even if it's in 2 years, while I would be happy to hear more not narrative.
Of the Faulknerverse.
No, I don't care about that. More fiction from Taylor because she's an incredible songwriter, and I was taking most of it as fiction to begin with. While I love the fiction that she's writing.
Yeah, nothing's changed for you.
No, it's exactly the same.
There's the whole ass same.
No, the whole blip was, the songs are interconnected. Like her writing fiction. I mean, and I even say in Taylor Swift Part 1, I think, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of the first instance of her writing fiction. Like, I just thought a lot of it was, other than the songs that like had her boyfriend's names in them, I literally assumed they would just, that doesn't matter. So I would be happy. I hope this is not the end of her writing fiction, but it makes sense as a pair to say folklore. I'm writing folklore. Evermore. This is the end of the story.
Yeah, I think that people just love a trilogy.
Well, and people just like more albums. She did a surprise album, then she did a second surprise album, and
let's go for a third.
Yeah, if she put out a third surprise album, they'd be like, I'm pretty sure there's a fourth one. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's okay. We're all excited. We're having fun. Like, I think it's fun. I would love there to be a third one. I don't think there will be, but like I've said it multiple times. I'll be pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hit a couple highlights on the track list of just interesting things. Like I said before, there are some interconnected narratives. So 'Tis the Damn Season, the narrator is supposed to be Dorothea, the girl who goes to LA. So she's in LA and she's talking about coming back to her hometown and meeting up with this old flame, and you know what the song is about, and like sort of rekindling an old flame, but just for Christmas and yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the song Dorothea, they talk about a high school lover who went away, and how he wants Dorothea to come back. So that is the same person in there. It's not as complicated and interconnected, but 'Tis the Damn Season is Dorothea, and the song Dorothea is from the perspective of the boy in that song. And apparently, in her mind, they all go to the same school, which is it's kind of cute. Which I guess now we canonically is in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Oh, wow!
They talk about Tupelo, so it's like, okay, so I guess canonically, Betty and James and the other girl all go to school in Tupelo. I guess.
Man, you know? this is we're getting into Tupelo moves. That is moving into I don't know how familiar you are with Garrison Keillor and his town Lake Wobegon, but like he has a whole town.
Yeah.
This is high shenanigans. This is for a different show.
So I've actually, now that I'm looking through my notes, I've hit most of these, like Coney Island, the National. Yeah, I already talked about that. There's one note that's like mildly interesting. The song Happiness, she actually wrote a week before the album's release.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. That's wild to me. Talked about Willow, talked about how the music video is tied in with the music video to Cardigan, and how it goes from spring to winter, which I think is interesting. Also, and this is a little bit more of the cosmology of Taylor Swift, whenever she talks, since she started dating Joe Alwyn, who actually writes several songs on this and the last album.
Really? That's okay.
He, for some reason, is under a pseudonym that is WB in my
Jack
notes.
Antonoff.
Yeah, exactly. Here's hoping. No, it's WB, but I gotta stop. This is a note for later. Don't abbreviate their names because you're gonna forget what it is. Whatever. People can look it up. But he writes under a pseudonym in a couple of songs. He actually wrote Champagne Problems with her and several other songs. I'll find it in a minute. But since she started dating him, you see this reoccurring motif of gold. And I've sort of assumed, I guess I haven't found documentation of this, but I haven't looked that hard. When she's talking about gold, she's talking about him.
Oh.
And it's always this consistent, like, and Lover, it's a ton. Like, it comes up all the time where she talks about gold and things being golden. Like, in my mind, that is this guy.
Okay.
So, and in Invisible String, she talks about a golden thread, a golden string tying you to me.
Mm-hmm.
Tying me to you. I don't know. Whatever. So, this is pretty consistent with this motif of her boyfriend being this symbol of gold. So in Willow, the music video starts with she's in the cottage, and there's a gold string that is going into the piano, and so she follows this gold string through a lot of the music video and ends up finding this boy who she falls in love with and kisses and blah blah blah. And it seems to me in the cosmology of Taylor Swift to be representative of her boyfriend, which is vaguely interesting. So
yeah, that will be, man. You are being if for someone that says they don't care about their personal life, you are doing some internet sleuthing over here. Man.
Well, no, this is the thing. I haven't looked it up. I just noticed starting in that album, boy, she keeps saying gold a lot, and it's gold and blue, and those seem to be the same person, but I might be wrong. Where it's like talking about a person being golden, but then like they have this sadness inside of them that is this blue, and it makes sense to me to be the same character, but there is this person who she sees as golden, and that started when she started dating this one boy, which again, I don't know these people, so let's just maybe throw that part out. But starting at the album Lover, there is a character that is gold. And then that same character, there's all this talk about blue, which seems to mean that, or seems to show that this character has a lot of sort of underlying depression and turmoil inside of them. Mm-hmm. It just comes up a lot. If you listen, it comes up a lot. Those two colors come up a lot. The last thing that I touched on earlier, Marjorie, track 13, her lucky number, is about her grandmother. Track 13 on Folklore is about her grandfather. And when you listen to Marjorie, you hear this kind of ethereal singing in the outro. So her grandmother was actually an opera singer. And
wow.
Is the person that Taylor Swift credits to getting her into music. Like, her grandmother and her grandmother's love for music is what got her interested in being a musician in the first place. And that singing at the end is actual recordings of her grandmother, Marjorie.
Oh, that's wild, man. That is a nice factoid.
It is exactly a factoid. It's
that is the best factoid.
Kiss.
Little chef's kiss of a factoid.
So anyway, that's what I've got as far as the album. I loved it. I really thought it was interesting and mature. I love, the duality between the two albums. I think that gives both of them so much listenability, where like I can go back and forth and just say like, and it gives it some depth to think about the two of them as one project. I love the direction she's going. I'd be fine if she comes back to pop, but the maturity and not that her music was immature before, but the maturity and the depth of songwriting that she's shown in this album is very exciting for the future. And I'll be very happy to do more episodes when her next album comes out in 2 weeks or 2 years.
Yeah, they can catch us recording an emergency podcast by the end of this year in order to get Taylor Swift's latest album in.
Yeah, episodes 65 and 66 will be both about Taylor Swift.
No, but I totally agree. Yeah, I loved it. I thought that this was, went into it a little not necessarily concerned, but
Sure. But
yeah,
understandably, she
yeah,
just
yeah.
came out with an album.
Exactly. But
And nobody
no.
wants a B-side.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I think that her songwriting is great. As I said, like the musical choices that she made throughout were great. I like that she continues to challenge herself in a lot of musical ways. I could definitely hear the influence from like National as well as Bon Iver. And even like, someone that seemed to have fallen away from the music of it, which is Jack Antonoff, who did a lot on...
A lot less songs on it. I think he just produced one song on this album.
Was that one song... long story short?
I don't think so. I want to say it's like track 4.
Oh, interesting.
I'll look it up.
Well, if in the case, I mean, I think that the journey she's going on musically has continued to improve, I have been really into this season of Taylor post Reputation. Like, Lover into these two have been excellent, and super optimistic for the future.
It was Gold Rush.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense, actually. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Well, anyway, thank you all so much for listening to our show. Thank you all so much for coming back and hearing us talk about Taylor Swift, this part 3. And thank you for coming back so soon. You can find us on Instagram at Get Better Podcast. That's get_better_podcast, where you can find little snippets from our episodes, as well as now some original art from Sam Cherry himself. And into some more secret comic book news, secret not so secret comic book news.
But it's becoming more secret as it's becoming more of a comic book, because we are joking our way into writing a comic book.
Yes. You can also find us on YouTube. It is the Get Better Podcast, where you can find long forms of all of our shows, as well as clips where you can send back and forth to people to get more people exposed to it. Rate and review us on iTunes. I still don't know how one would do that on Spotify, but it really, really helps get us noticed. And until then, you can continue searching us on Spotify to, I guess, increase the likelihood that someone will find us. And that's all we have for this week. So see you guys next week.
All right.
See you. Bye forever.